Hello guys, today I'm going to show you how to make virtual machines in Linux, and not just any kind, but the ones that you can use for gaming. Yes, yeah, virtual machines usually don't have good performance and most have the performance of a PC from 10 years ago that your granny would use, but these ones are different. To begin with, what you would need is a USB and a download of a Linux distro you're choosing. Yes, we will be using Linux instead of Windows, but we don't have a choice. I chose Arch Linux, but this guide also works for Manjaro, which is based on Arch. So before you do this, you have to enable two things in your BIOS. You have to enable VTX and VTD, or IOMMU grouping, which are the virtualization technologies we need for this project. Now when you have plugged in the USB into your computer, you can start the Arch Linux Live environment. Of course, we must wait for it to initialize because it's just a little OS and a USB stick. We have two ways of installing Arch Linux. We have the hard way, which is defining every partition and specifically installing the applications we find, or we can use Arch install. Of course, it's gonna connect to the internet because this is a network installation. Neat. So rather than doing laborious commands, you can just have this GUI. There's the keyboard layout. We like US, so we're just gonna leave it be. Mirror regions. Why not? We'll choose what's closest to us. We'll choose Bulgaria, Greece, Romania, Serbia, Turkey. And basically when we install updates, it will first check these mirrors because it's the fastest way. Locale language, it's US. Encoding, you can just leave it at UTF. And now the drives. Basically, what you want to do is you want to choose your main drive and not the USB, because if you choose the USB, well, the whole thing will break. So we'll choose the SSD and we'll select this layout. Now, usually you can manually partition the drive, but of course, we're going to do it the easy way. Use ext4. And we're going to separate the partition for home because we're not barbarians. You can encrypt it, but it's going to take a toll on your SSD. It doesn't like take away performance per se, but it's going to be annoying because like after 5 years your SSD will wear out. Hostname, Arch Linux, why not? We're going to change it to demo VM because this is essentially what this is. This is a virtual machine. We can make a root password. I'm going to keep it simple, and we're going to add a user account, name ourselves test. Should you be super user? Yes. And confirm and exit. So now we're at profiles, which is basically how you want Arch Linux to look like. And of course, we're going to want to have a desktop, and this will show us a wide assortment of different things. We're going to select KDE because it's the closest thing to Windows in terms of aesthetics. We're going to select NVIDIA proprietary. Okay, and we're gonna select Pipewire for audio. We can leave the kernel with Linux, but if you want something more secure, you can choose hardened. But I generally just select normal Linux because I like being up to date. For additional packages, you might be surprised, but Linux just doesn't install a browser. You can always install it separately using the pacman command, which we'll view later. But for now, we're going to install Firefox, and we're going to install Nano, which is a text manager. Now for network configuration, because we're using KDE, we're gonna use Network Manager. For time zone, well, where we really are, because let's just say that the internet won't work if we do. So we're gonna select all the optional repositories because we just like that. And we'll hit install. Continue, and it's gonna work its magic. So at the end of this, it will ask you if you'd like to truthen to the newly created installation, and we're just gonna say no. And we're going to reboot. And now we'll see the Arch Linux screen. It will automatically boot if you don't press anything. Look what we have here. It's Arch Linux. But with a new look with KDE Plasma, which looks a lot like Windows. Actually, it's kind of one-to-one with Windows if you search hard enough, because if we try, we can search for global teams, and when we click on get global teams, we can look that this, specifically this distro, is extremely customizable, and we can do a lot of things. We can make it look like Ubuntu, we can make it look like anything. Alright, before doing anything else, I'm going to change the VM and pass through a GPU to it, so the tutorial can be much smoother. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, and we have the GPU enabled, I'm just gonna switch to dark mode real quick. Okay, that's much better for my eyes. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we are going to go to the official Arsenix pass-through guide, and you can read it with me and follow it along. Now, what we must do is go to our bootloader and change certain parameters. For that, we must write sudo nano etc default grub, and you're gonna see this. So what we have to do is go to default and add Intel IOMMU equals on. Of course, if you're not with an Intel CPU, you can just change it to AMD IOMMU equals on. So you're gonna type Control X and yes, and then so now we must update the bootloader. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna type sudo grub make config o boot grub.cfg and hit enter. There it is. Your grub file is updated and now you have to reboot. Well, it happened. I lost some of the audio from the video, so the next 2 minutes will sound horrible. It was nearly over, so hang on. What you're gonna do now is you're gonna copy this command onto the console, and basically what you're gonna be looking for is if it says IOMMU enabled. If it says that, you're Gucci. That means you can actually do this guide. If not, well, you just can't. Now you're gonna write sudo pacman s so we can actually get the software we need for virtualization. So you're gonna write sudo pacman s camel libvirt edk2-ovmf virt manager eb tables dns mask, and if you're doing a Win11 virtual machine, install software tpm as well. We're going to choose the full camel installation and we're going to hit Y and enter. Now that this is done, we will open Virtual Machine Manager. We're going to create a VM. We will select the ISO we downloaded of the directory from Microsoft, and we're going to customize it before configuration. What we're going to do now is we're going to select UFI for .fd. Make sure it's 64-bit because it's going to be really bad if it's not. And we're going to rename it to Win10 because it's not a Win11 machine. We are going to change everything that's like SATA or default to virtio because it's more efficient. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to change the socket to 1 and the cores to 4 and the twist 2, because basically we don't have multiple CPUs in one system. We have one CPU with just a couple of hyper-threaded cores, and basically we've set the memory, but we'll add to it later. Now we're going to enable the ISO to be booted, and we're going to add the CD-ROM of the drivers into the description that are going to enable Windows to understand what the driver is, because during the installation you'll need that. And basically what we're going to do now is we're going to open the config for Windows 10.txt, and we're going to copy some features which will enable you to bypass some virtual machine detection, but it's more for driver purposes rather than video games. Don't try to avert anti-cheat because they'll ban you. literally Battle Eye, which is used in Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, it in Genshin Impact. It literally says if it even gets a sniff of you that you're using this, it will ban you. So just if you're playing these games like Valorant and all these games with aggressive anti cheats, uh, don't try virtual machines. But maybe you're doing some piracy. Uh, Use virtual machines. Actually, it will protect you from the viruses. So good for you. We're gonna start the installation, and well, I don't really need to handhold you on this. It's a Windows install. It is basically self-explanatory. I'll only be needed when we actually reach the part where we have to install the driver to see the storage. Okay, so we're here, and we don't see the storage. So what's the problem? We're going to open load driver, and we're going to enter the CD-ROM of virtio, and we're going to open ViveStore, and we are going to select Win10, AMD64, and install the driver. Now you can see it and use it, and carry on with the installation. So, now that you've installed Windows 10, shut it down. What you're gonna do is we're gonna just copy the commands off of here, because basically that's what we're gonna do. And we're gonna go here, we're going to copy this, so we can create a directory. We're gonna copy this, which will essentially make the scripts that we're about to write work. And these scripts, I have an actual example of how these scripts look like this. Here is like what we're gonna put in another folder, and we're gonna name this. But later, you should know that it goes like this. We have example, we have prepare, release, and after prepare, we have begin, start.sh, and for release, we have end and revert.sh. Okay? Okay. And this is basically the structure we're following. You want it a little bit easier on the eyes. I'll have everything posted in the description, so don't worry about it. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna just follow the script. We're going to go here. We're gonna go to, firstly, we're gonna become a super user, because it's just gonna be much easier to do everything while you're a super user, because you won't need enter things, but just don't use root for anything. When you're done doing the sudo things, just type Alt Z or Control Z, or just exit this. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to libvirt hooks, okay? And we see that we lack something from the script, and we must create it. Make directory camu d. Okay, and we're gonna go to, for that, we must make a operation file, so nano kvm. And what we're essentially going to do is we're going to enter the PCI IDs of our GPUs. The easy way to view what your GPU PCI is to type ls PCI such case. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to just search for your GPU, and easily do by finding media. And there's my GPU, wholesomely named 8 and 9, completely disconnected from this. Lovely. So, and this, which is just cursed. So I'm just gonna remove these, and I'm gonna change these to their appropriate values. So done. Just gonna copy that, create kvm.com. What I'm gonna do now, we're gonna go to we're gonna make directory Win10. We're gonna go to Win, and we're gonna directory. Let's go back to the structure file so we can be sure. And then we're gonna create prepare, begin, and release. Okay, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create the script part. And script part basically is say prepare, begin, start.sh. Now what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do this. Now I'll explain everything for you. What you're doing now is you're referencing kvm conf which will interpret your GPU's PCI IDs to the script. What will happen then is you'll unbind the VT consoles and the frame buffer so you can actually detach the GPU from Linux and hand it over to the VM. Now, after this is done, basically it waits for 2 seconds because we have to wait for this to finish completely. If we don't give it the time to wait, it might not have finished with unbinding everything. After that, we just unload drivers, detach everything. That's it. This is done. We have to create another script. Create word.sh. This is basically start sh but in reverse. You'll just have to rebind everything again. So when you get out of the VM, you can go back to Linux without having to restart. It's convenient, especially if you have one GPU, and actually this is a script intended for use by you who have only one GPU. Imagine you have an old AMD processor and a GPU, because nearly all Intel CPUs nowadays have iGPUs in them. Usually Intel guys don't have them. What are we gonna do? Finally, we're going to make them executable. So, cmod plus x to the plus, and here we're going to write chmod plus x. Okay, now they're executable. Before starting the GPU, not the GPU, before starting the VM, we're going to add the GPU to the VM, and we're going to set video to none. Of course, usually we'd want to remove everything else, so we're just going to go to the XML file. And where we see graphics and video, we'll just remove it. It's much more convenient. And we're going to add a USB mouse and a virtio keyboard. So it just has a better responsiveness when you're playing games, because some games as Far Cry 5 will literally tank the FPS so low that you're gonna get 10 FPS on a 2080 Super, which usually gets 100 FPS on high settings. And I'm saying it gets 10 FPS on low settings when you don't have this into the XML. So finally, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start.